Meantime, a new report from the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party says China is funding the U.S. fentanyl crisis. According to the report, China is using tax rebates to subsidize the manufacturing and export of fentanyl materials, awarding grants to companies openly trafficking in the narcotic, economically benefiting from the ongoing epidemic, and more. Those are only 3 of the investigation's findings. So with us tonight for more on this is U.S. Congressman and House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party ranking member Raja Krishnamoorthi. Congressman, thank you for joining Last Call tonight. Tell me what you found, first of all, in this report.
Well, I think a couple of statistics just jump out at you. One is that 97% of all illicit fentanyl that arrives in the U.S. comes from China. That's one. The second is there were 0 reported deaths related to fentanyl in China, but there were more than 110,000 fentanyl-related deaths in the U.S. And that basically points to 2 things. One, the Chinese are very, very good at enforcing their own internal drug laws, prosecuting traffickers, in a lot of cases executing them, and controlling the drug problem internally. But 2, when it comes to their companies and entities and individuals exporting illicit fentanyl to the U.S., they, to charitably put it, turn a blind eye and remain unconcerned.
Yeah, that blind eye question, I think, is the important one. I had a chance to review this report last night before it became public this morning. And my question is really around this question of intent by the Chinese government. Is this sort of one of these things where, you know, they kind of subsidize some of these companies that are producing these fentanyl precursors because they subsidize every company in China, and so they're just kind of scooping up these companies in that basket? Or is this an intentional act by the Chinese government to push these companies and to push this stuff into the United States? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't have an answer as to what's inside Xi Jinping's head or the Standing Politburo. However, here's the evidence that we do know. One is that they certainly know of the companies who receive these VAT tax rebates, these subsidies for the export of various products, including fentanyl, including illicit fentanyl. Secondly, a lot of these companies actually are controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. In other words, they have stakes, they're state-owned entities in some cases, or they have what are called golden shares or board seats on those companies' boards. And then the third thing, which is very disturbing, is that some of these entities receive awards, recognition, other forms of grants from the state for their activities, including their illicit activities, apparently.
Yeah, and I guess it's not necessarily an either or, right? It's not that this is the Chinese government being oblivious to it or that it's a strategic, intentional thing. I mean, there could be some corruption at stake here where you just have officials in the middle of the hierarchy turning a blind eye, maybe taking some money and allowing this activity to go on, but it's not sort of a deliberate Chinese government action. And so if that's the case, then the big question is, what do you do about it as the U.S. government? I mean, you're sitting there on Capitol Hill. You have all sorts of legislative opportunities. The executive branch has its own set of skills that it can use. What do you do here as the U.S. government now that you know what we know from your report today?
I think you do at least a couple things. One, which is a no-brainer, is that we actually don't have a sanctions authority that the White House or the executive branch can use to sanction those companies that actually do a lot of legitimate business, but then operate this side hustle of engaging in the export of illegal fentanyl precursors. Believe it or not, there are a lot of those types of companies in China, and we should absolutely have sanctions authority with regard to them. The second is, unfortunately, even today, you can go onto e-commerce sites in China and order fentanyl or other powerful synthetic opioids and have it delivered to you by U.S. mail and other types of delivery services, believe it or not. And so the main reason for that,
astonishing to me.
It's astonishing, but it's happening every day. And unfortunately, one of the things that we need to do is we need to close certain loopholes, or we need to at least radically change them such that, for instance, packages less than $800 in value receive a lot more scrutiny than they do today by the Customs and Border Patrol.
Yeah.
Because today there's something called the de minimis exception where they don't receive that type of scrutiny.
Congressman, fascinating report. Thank you for being on Last Call tonight to bring us the details. Really appreciate your insights there.